Okay. Hello, everybody. If anybody's here, let me see if I can find the link. Join. Live. Okay. All right. Okay, just give me a second. I will post the link on X and that will be there. Okay. Here's the link. I live session. Okay. All right. So let me also post this to the Discord channel. Here it is. All right, let's start. Need to find need to learn how to do this. It's now okay. What I'm looking for is a way of sharing screen. Let me see. Just be patient, please. Where do we find it? Okay, here I think. Yes. Okay, great. All right. Hi, everybody. Martin, Zero G, RB, Joseph. Hi, everybody. Okay. So it seems that we have a nice Bitcoin day, right? I don't know. I need to fix my background. It looks like a mess. It's mostly like, see my sword. I have my Gladius here, my miniatures, what are my miniatures? It's a mess. It's like that is my brain. This is how my brain is. It's like full of stuff. Anyway, let's see if we can look at the chart. Trying to share. Yes. Let me know in the chat. Do you see the chart? Can you see the chart? I think you should be able to see the chart, right? Yes. Okay, so this is the usual chart, right, for the indicators. Again, this indicator is available. Not yet. I think I'm going to post it today. I'm going to create this as the second one, this lower one. I'm going to make it available today. It will take probably a couple of days before the moderators. So TradingView has this process where you make a script available to people, and then we have moderators. So it is a good function, because otherwise anybody will create like silly and not useful indicators, so trolls and things like that. They can also maybe misguide people. So we have these reviewers, these moderators. So I think they work basically for free. So one has to be patient, and then they review it. They see if it's something new that is not already there, or if it's based on some logical thing or whatever. So it takes a couple of days to be approved. And we had some problems for the first indicator because some people replicated some of his features, because me and also HC Burger publish these articles where basically we explain the logic. But by the way, most of these other indicators don't have all the features that this one has, and one of the main one is that it's adaptive. So it is something unique that I created. So it's basically like I explained this before, but if there are new people, instead of taking the entire data set, right? So instead of taking everything from from the start and then fitting it, like you can see when we do this offline, because it will have been illogical to do that at any given moment, right? How do you know what the future information is? So what this does, it takes the information up to that point, and then it's trying to do this fitting. And fitting, by the way, is not easy to do with TradingView. They don't have anything natural for doing regression. There are a lot of limitations with TradingView. It's nice because it's interactive, it's live, you can get data in real time, but it has a lot of limitations. So you need to find ways to go around this limitation. If you are good, you can do almost anything, but it's a little bit more complicated. But anyway, so what this does, it's adapting. So basically, I'm using a kind of like a moving window, and it's trying to do the power law over that region. But actually, it's a pretty good thing because I found some articles recently where they did something similar, but using some some volatility measures, and also what is called the ARST exponent, that is basically a measure for fractal behavior. They combine the two, and they show there is a power law there too. And power laws come, and they were all surprised. We put it in the title. Oh, this they say something like there is an invisible hand that produces these power laws. Something like that. And it's nice because it's nice to see other people. And they publish in a serious journal. And they use scientific methods to basically support my claims that there is very much regular behavior on Bitcoin, and it seems to follow these power laws in many different ways. Right? Their angle was different. They didn't fit the data with a simple power law like here. We look at some other properties like fractal properties of Bitcoin and volatility. Then they notice that if you look at the different scales, that is the entire point, right? What I explained many times. You want to look at different scales and then notice that there is this regularity. And they thought that it was really interesting. And you can use it to actually determine different stages of the market, different regimes in the market. Are we in a bullish area? Are we in a bearish area? Do people, because it's supposed to tell us something about the herding behavior. And so what I'm thinking to do, actually, first of all, I already wrote the code in MATLAB to reproduce this approach, and I verify that it's true. And also, because it's actually a relatively old paper, so I want to apply to the new data too. Then if it works, we can try to reproduce it in PineScript. PineScript is the language of TradingView. And then we can make another indicator, that maybe has even more features and more details to the analysis of Bitcoin. But I'm not ready yet. But this is ready. So this one below here is the one that I discussed previously. It's basically it's this idea of trying to reproduce in a linear fashion that spiral that I showed before, right? That beautiful spiral that Bitcoin seems to follow over time. And we want to reproduce it in a way that can be displayed in a chart like this that is, linear. So it's try to combine the linearity of, Bitcoin price that goes up and up over time, but also this circular behavior, this periodic behavior of Bitcoin. So so it's two different indicators, and when you combine them together, you have a lot of information. You can identify the tops, the bottoms, the different So this is actually something cool, these transitions between bull. So in this case, a bear to bull. These were actually, so this was from the previous cycle, but we are in a very similar place right now. So you actually can go back. So there are many different ways that you can use it, right? So you can look at where we are comparable, right? Now, if I found a way, that is another thing that I will try to add if there is interest. I want to find a way of superimposing the different cycles, one on top of the other, so it's easier to compare. But you can also do that here, right? You can see more or less where we are in the cycle. Then you can go back to a previous one and say, okay, what did he do there? Oh, he was trying to do this. Didn't like some of the things to notice is, are we above the? So what these two lines are, the red and the yellow, they represent, and I should write it somewhere when I publish it. But the orange one is the full model. Is the one that is trying to follow both the bottoms and the peaks of the cycle. So you can see here, it really finds, see where the green, so the blue is the price, right? In this, represented in this circular fashion. And then when it intersects the orange, because it's the full model, this is where we have the top, that is even more precise than here. So this top here is more based on using just regular cycles, 4-year cycles. And so it's not as adaptive as the orange one. But, using combination, you can see that they are approaching, because that they are curving, right? So that we are coming closer and closer to the top, because of the shape. We can even put degrees, or time. I use this convention of time. So if you go online, and by the way, you can find, if you want to get updates, I try to make the updates, but if you go under profile in my X account, there is like a longer description, and you click there because there was not enough space. So I use that. And so in the description, there are 2 links, one for the linear chart and another one for the spiral. So in theory, these 2 things are available. They don't have interactivity. You don't have you can use it to create alerts, but you can always go there and find these. And I want to keep them available to people, because these are accessible through the Patreon, because I would like some support from people, given that, like I said, this is becoming my profession now, my main job, trying to create these charts, helping people negotiating, understanding Bitcoin. But I want also to create a service for everybody for free. So it's this chart will be free for everybody to use. So if you need to, if you need a fix and you need to see this where we are in the cycle, or you want to see the power law, you can always go there and click these links. It's in my X profile in my account. But so these charts are based on that approach. They have some additional features. So like I said, this linear chart is adaptive. Here we have, both models, the full model, what I call the full model. The full model is supposed to, basically we observe, right, that there is these bottoms, they seem to appear a very precise distances from the trend. And this distance is all based on statistical property of Bitcoin. For example, in this moving window that I'm following, I calculate both the trend, but also the standard deviation. So basically, it's not really, I don't know if it is the correct way to call it standard deviation. It's more like the difference, the residual, what is called the residual. So it's the difference between what the model predicts, because the model supposedly it's the R square, it's 0.95, something like that. It's it's a simplification when we say that is how precise the model is. It's not really. So I'm completely aware of all these criticisms that people have sometimes. Oh, that is not really the precision, or that is not really, or for example, the fact that we're using logs makes that number a little bit bigger than it should be, but not really, because we are not focusing on these changes here. We are focusing on the scaling property. So in that case, it is correct. But then if you average over a long period of time, these residual and these deviations can be used to find these bottoms and tops, because, for example, it turns out that two standard deviations from the trend, and now it's not really this adaptive trend, because see here, for example, is emphasizing, because it's close to the tops, is emphasizing the tops, but the general trend is more equal. So it turns out that the bottom are closer to, so we don't go as down as much as we go up. So usually we go down by a factor of something like 40%, if I remember well, 40 or 50% the trend, and this is how we identify the bottoms. Here we are even more precise, because instead of these deviations, we are using actually the natural cycle. So you see, we can tell it. So this is why it's best to use these two charts together, because you have a lot of confirmations, right? When you trade, you don't want to rely only on one signal. You want several signals. You want a lot of things coming together and telling you, yeah, this is what seems that things are going in this way. So it's more than just one single thing. So in this case, two relatively independent signals say we are at the bottom, and it seems to be correct. Not just for this one, but for all the others. You can double check if you have access to the chart. You can play around and you can look for the previous bottom. See here, this was where the previous bottom was. So it seems to be correct, right? Both type of approaches. Now here you can say, well, why didn't we go to the purple line? Again, because this one is the more adaptive one. And also, I think that cycle was a little bit different, where maybe they were, because of course, like, remember what I say, there are all these things that are influencing the price, and they create these disturbances, right? So it's possible there was something going on. One will have to go to the history, but you see also how these lines, they seem to follow, seem to follow this trend, right? This power law trend. They will really work nice in determining these trends, because of this adaptive nature of this version of a power law. But it's interesting. So this was the COVID, right? This was COVID that actually, strangely enough, happened a little bit before the halving. And during COVID, actually, we touched there. It's almost like we needed some kind of resetting. And what people thought it was really a bad event actually simply put us where we were supposed to be. During this period, usually we are along this purple line. So there is a lot of information. You can play around and try to understand. Like I was telling you before, knowing where we are in the cycle because of this chart allows you also to compare with previous cycle and say, okay, we're seeing what happens usually when we got in this transition from bear to bull. The red line is the normal model. So basically this blue line. Maybe I should color them in the same way, or using different color conventions. But the red line here is the normal model, the simple model. The orange one is the model that basically tries to follow the bottom. So it follows the bottom during the bear market, and then it starts to kind of, it's basically like a bump, and this bump is trying to follow the tops, and it does a very good job, as you can see, in getting the tops, right? Like here, for example. So it kind of switches, right? Notice what happens. So we go from orange be below because it's trying to follow the bottoms, to orange be above because now it's trying to catch up with the tops. So it's nice to see where we are in comparison with the previous cycle. Like, there were times where, for example, here you can see, right? And so it's always best to go to where we are in the cycle. Like I was mentioning the clock, so it's possible. I should add here probably like the time. What is the time? The current time. And so I think it's like 6:20 or something like that. So you can look at where it is. So maybe we can, I don't know if there is a way of converting this, because right now the x-axis is all in days. Maybe we can also add hours, so you can know how to compare, where we are right now to the previous times. You can see what happened, right? So even if I say this is basically the transition to bear to bull, it can be local events like this, right? We had COVID, it was a crazy event, and actually we went back to that bottom there, right? Because the orange curve is supposed to be close to the bottom. Here it was an exception, and but then, because, as I say, this is a transition. Okay, so there is like, if you look at with your naked eye, it doesn't look like, right, there is anything special there. Like why you're saying that is a transition? Notice actually the price was picking up. It seems that they wanted to go up there because we were leaving the bear behind, and we were trying to go in a bullish mode and go above the trend, because when we have these bubbles, whatever you want to call them, we are going above a trend. And so it was going above, it was going there, and then the COVID happened, and kind of resetted the clock almost. It was kind of resetting of the clock. And then, notice what happened after that. It tried to go back again, and then finally it started to really go crazy. And so I think this is a contribution that, because other people come up with this idea of putting the price on the circular map, right? I was not the first one, and it's a very beautiful idea. Like I say, it's something that we do in physics all the time when we study something periodic. But anytime you apply something, like I have, for example, I have a patent. I have a patent where I took something that people used before. It's called a phase lock loop, and then applied in the field of neuroscience. I didn't invent the phase lock loop, but I invented the application to neuroscience of a particular application in that particular field. Sometimes you can get a patent by doing something relatively new in a new field. So this is a nice idea, because it took something that people use in other fields and applied to Bitcoin. But it was kind of natural because of these Fourier cycles, but the first person that does it gets the credit. It was a really cool idea. So my innovation there was to show that when you do that, this trend, that is the power law trend, looks very nice. It's actually a spiral. It becomes a spiral. And then there is this entire field of power law spirals that come up in nature anytime you have a process that is both growing with a very precise pattern. These power laws will come everywhere, and also some kind of circular behavior, like if you have like a horn that is going in a circle or whatever, or the tree rings and things like that. So if you have some kind of cyclic pattern or some kind of physical limitations that makes things go around, then you have this power law spiral. And Bitcoin seems to behave in this way. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think there is something deep there. But, this is what it does. And so this is what I show, that when you look at these spirals, the price looks, it kind of looked before without doing the spiral. It seemed regular, but that is exactly what I'm pointing out. The people notice was regular also in the log linear chart, right? Oh, look, it looks nice, like a nice curve, I wonder what is that curve. Nobody ever say it's a power law, and that means something. It's not just like some random stuff. It has significance. It has a lot of consequences for the nature of Bitcoin, for its future, what it those, all kind of interesting things. So same thing with when you put it in a circular pattern. Now these lines, these straight lines in the log chart, are actually beautiful spirals. So the story continues. Where it goes in so many different interesting directions. So when you do that and actually combine the two, the simple model and the more complicated model, I have another rendition. I even made, if you browse my, right now you are in the YouTube channel. So if you want to support me, without, paying directly money, you can also click on the other videos, browse, get some fun and entertainment. There is actually a clock that I made, that has the two spirals, and then I show regions that are color coded, red and green, where you can identify bull markets and bear markets. So, for example, you can see here, whenever the orange line is below the red one, we are usually in the bear market, right? So this convention, so it's relative, right? What you consider bull and bear, but here everything is consistent. It's like a precise language to talk about these things. So, for example, we should consider, this is kind of a convention, right? So it's arbitrary, but also it's consistent with the vision, right? So whenever you are above the trend, that is where the real bull starts, right? And it lasted relatively small, little time, but it's not really small, right? It was from December 20, right, for the last cycle, all the way. So if you consider here being the top, right, it took almost 2 years, right? Or 1 year. What else? January 21st. Basically 1 year. So it took one entire year to go through here. And so that is what the convention is in this case, whenever we cross. But you see, this guy doesn't know anything about the crossing. It's all based on the natural cycle of Bitcoin. So they are independent signals. But you see how they line up pretty well, right? Not perfectly, but they line up here. So again, it's one of these confirmation. You have a confirmation of crossing the trend that tell us. So this is also in the future, whenever we are going to reach that moment, is a very critical moment, because if you want to do DCA, if you want to do, it's, things are moving fast, and so it's the real bull market that starts there, and the two different signals are somehow aligned, So how this was created? Well, this was created. It's relatively simple. Eventually, I can make it more adaptive, but the idea is that basically I align, right, the first peak that we had that was due to halving, and then I say, okay, from that moment on, look for 4-year cycles, right? So it's a relatively simple approach, but it seems to work. And then on top of that, I superimpose the models that also seem to follow these very precise patterns. And so this looks like a cusp, right? What that is really, if you think about the clock, and I made it in this way because otherwise this will be negative, right? It's a sine wave. So when the sine wave intersects, this is where the sine wave intersects with zero sign. So it goes from being positive to negative. But it basically means, you're going around a circle, and so you're, crossing one of these angles, right? One of these quadrants. So you're going in the quadrant where, you just left the top, you reach the bottom. So top is zero, right? In the the clock says, I don't know if you want to open the clock. Like I told you, there is a link in my X account. I don't want to switch back and forth because then I get lost and so on. But the clock says it's a convention. 0 is the top, right? The 0 hour is the top. 3 is the bottom. So it takes about 1 year to reach the top. But see how everything is so organized and makes sense. And we have now a language to talk about these things. So 3 o'clock, it's the bottom. And then 6 o'clock is this transition from bear to bull. that is basically what we just had a few weeks ago. And then finally you have a 9, that is this transition here to the full bull market. And so they are independent because one is kind of this kind of rigid approach where we say, it takes 4 years and all these phases, almost like times of a day or maybe seasons, right? So 4 seasons, they all mean something. And it's the first time that I know that somebody pointed out that actually in the circle, each quadrant means something, and when you have these transitions from one quadrant to the other, they actually have a meaning in terms of this terminology of bear and bulls and so on. So, for example, here, when, like I say now a few times, you will think that nothing is happening, right? Because it's not anything special, but actually, if you follow this reasoning and this consistency of behavior, it looks like we are going to the bullish part of the pattern. Usually it happens quite close. This triangle here means the halving. So we were very close to the halving. That makes sense because people kind of anticipate the halving. They are preparing. Now there was this one of a kind event of a COVID that resetted the clock, but in general, right? So if you go to the previous cycle, you can see again the consistency of that, right? So you see how everything was very similar in the previous cycle. So this was a cycle around 2016, to 18. This was an amazing cycle. I hope that this cycle, the next cycles, is like this because it was crazy. It was completely crazy. I don't know. Maybe the new people that just started to join Bitcoin recently, they didn't witness this. I witnessed all of it. I was here even for the first one. The first one, I was like a newbie. I didn't know anything. I was all excited. Bitcoin is going up. And then got all sad when it crashed. But I still believe it. I still believe this was. In fact, actually, we can go through all of them. So this was the 13. This were basically this. I joined Bitcoin kind of around here. It was before the halving. And you see again how the purple finds the bottom, right? It grabs the bottom. So here in our terminology, this when we did the transition from bear to bull, we are very close to the halving, and then you see when things really went crazy. So here it says, according to this model, it says the transition to full bull is here, so it's a little bit before crossing. So this is why I told you they are independent. Sometimes they perfectly match, but they're kind of consistent, right? As you can see, just after that, right, the price went crazy and then finally cross. Also because here we have this more adaptive curve, and so this is why also this differ a little bit more than in the more the chart that I usually do that takes in consideration all the data at once. So this is kind of a little bit more realistic in a sense because it's like what you will do if you were using just a small little window to do this fitting. And it still worked pretty amazing, right? You can still see the power law behavior. So anyway, the crossing was here, so just a little bit later. And then, the market went really crazy, reached a peak, and, kind of monetary peak, then, kind of tried to find itself. And then finally, we had a real peak, right? And so again, look how incredibly nice the orange line gets that peak very precisely. The general 4 years trend, not a little bit later, but still pretty good. So this is why you want to combine all of them. It's because they give you so much more information when you combine. And then look at this, the bottom there, right? Find the bottom. Okay, so this tells you, oh, here is the bottom. Not exactly, but if you combine again with the purple and the two kind of align, okay, yeah, here this is where bottom is. So you really can use these with caution, etc., to tell you where you are in the cycle. And so again, the transition kind of makes sense here, right? We started to leave a bear market. We went above a purple. There is more and more confidence. We kind of coast around the purple, and then just before the halving, because this triangle, this is what it means, we left. And you see how it seems that price kind of finds these lines, they stay along the line, even during the bear market. This is why, and I don't want to be an ass, I don't want to say, S2F is bad, S2F doesn't do this, doesn't have all this ability to follow what happened, because it's a very simple model. It jumps when it stays stable. Basically, this is what it says, what model says, right? It's supposed to be constant. Why constant? Because supply basically is constant, right? We kind of almost mine all the coins, so it doesn't really change too much. And then there is this very, very small flow of coins, and you change it by a factor of 2. But basically you're taking something that's constant, and now you're dividing by something that is less by a factor of 2, so it jumps, right, all of a sudden, and then it stays more or less where it's supposed to be according to S2F. But it's not what we observe in the real behavior of Bitcoin. So this model is more useful for that too, because it tells you what happens even after the halving and before the halving. So again, transition to full market, to full bull market. Things got really exciting, right? So it's not like it's not always associated with the crossing, but the crossing is very close. Right? The crossing of the blue line is close to this thing. It's nice that the two are not exactly the same, right? They kind of are related to each other, but they are different ways of looking at the same thing. And then again, top here. So this was the other cycle, right? With 18 cycle, we reached the top. I wish so much that it's not that I didn't have this chart. I started to work on this since 2014. I did have it, but I didn't trust it. I didn't have enough information. I didn't have enough cycles. I didn't have. If the cycles were like every year, then the pattern will be clear much before, right? But because they happen every 4 years, I also had a bias. People, like in particular in the beginning, I want to share this with you. In the beginning, when I joined, right, in that 2012-13 period, people were still making, and they do not even now, but they were making a lot of analogies with tulips. They were saying, "Oh, Bitcoin is a tulip," but and so they were using this language of bubbles in a very negative way. Basically, they were saying, "Oh, it will go to crazy prices and it will crash and will never recover." That's what real bubbles do, right? And this is why Bitcoin is not a bubble. It has these exciting periods, but as explained many times in my philosophy of power law, I consider them like excitations, like the system goes through kind of a shock, because even if the change of supply is small relatively to the total supply, it's still a change, right? It's like in the body. If I start to go outside and run, etc., my body needs to catch up to this change, and it reacts, right? I start to get sweaty. I start to get, my face change colors, my heartbeat. So it's still reacting to that change, because the system wants to keep this normal behavior, this homeostasis. And that is very typical of power law. This is why I say it's not just some kind of linear regression, linear fitting. It reveals so much about properties about the system, the fact that we're dealing with a power law. And so it's consistent to this story that whenever we have some kind of excitation that is represented by this, and the excitation is not just a change in fact, I was thinking about that the other day. It's not just the change itself in the supply, because remember, this is a system that is made of people in the end, right? There are mechanistic things like the code that are related to the mining, etc., all machines, but it's a symbiosis that is actually, I'm sorry if I do philosophical things, but this is how my brain works. I mean, thinking all the time about these analogies. So it's this symbiosis between man and machine, right? That is kind of amazing because it's basically where we are going as a society. We are more and more merging with our clever machines. And Bitcoin is actually an experiment in doing that because, there is the people's reaction, there are the machines that are doing the mining, etc. So it's this collaboration between humans and machines. And so humans react to this thing actually before the halving itself, because they all get excited, right? Like all of us, we get prepared, there is anticipation. It's almost like, I know that maybe people don't like this idea, but it's almost like a ritual, right? It's like this 4 years ritual that we all do, and we get all prepared, and we are celebrating this thing, called Bitcoin. And but it's nice, right? It's nice to have ritual like Christmas or whatever. Basically, like Bitcoin Christmas, right? Everybody get excited and so on, And so when you get excited, you get a response like that, right? And it's good because, in fact, there is a paper that, and I want to start to analyze this paper and make comments, like reactions. So there is this physicist that I mentioned all the time, Sornet. He's a physicist that focus on these financial markets, and he has all these tools to understand, and power laws are one of the tools that he's using. And he analyzed the bubbles, and he has a very nice article about how bubbles are almost like, uses these analogies almost like relays. They kind of give these impulses, give these pushes to the system that brings in more waves of people. This is when, yes, many people will leave after a peak because they get disappointed, or they, but many people stay because they brought in by the excitement, by the news, by people do more things during these times because there are more rewards. So, the price is going up. So more developers come in, more products, more. There is a lot of things happening. So it's basically kind of a cycle of innovation that is kind of dotted, that is punctuated by these pulses, by these pulses of activity. So I didn't have that vocabulary, I didn't have that understanding. So in the beginning, when I was experiencing the first bubble, here, I was all excited, and prices went crazy, but people were talking about exponential growth. This is why I'm so against S2F, because I already saw that. People were already talking about Bitcoin being an exponential growth. That is kind of what S2F says. And it was very detrimental because people had the bad impression about what Bitcoin was going to do. That was like going to crazy. Systems like that are not stable. They cannot do this for very long. Usually they crash, right? So this is why people were saying, oh, it's tulips, it's a blah, blah, blah. And so I was resisting that because everything in my body said it was not tulip. But, we didn't have a lot of data and evidence to prove it to ourselves and to the world that was the case. So I was resisting a lot. And, and when it crashed, and when I started to think, in my bed moments at night, when we have our dark night of the soul, I was thinking maybe they are right, like for a moment, okay, forgive me, I'm a human being too, so I still believe it. I still, and they even hacked me during this time. They took 35 Bitcoins from me, and but I stick with Bitcoin, but I was trying to make sense of this, what is going on, etc. So I didn't have yet the language. And when this happened, when the second, whatever you want to call it, bubble, Christmas, Bitcoin Christmas, whatever you want to call it, um, I thought that again, this time was different. I thought this time is different. The institutions coming in because we didn't have ETFs, but this is when some of the institutions started to join, some of the banks, etc. Started to be serious about Bitcoin. And for this time is different. It's going to continue to be because I did have the models now, but I didn't want to say maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. My models are wrong. So it's going up, 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 and I didn't use it properly because actually, and I don't mind. You can make fun of me, and you should, but I had a lot of alts. I had a lot of alts because, first of all, when I got hacked, the guy took most of my Bitcoin. It's I need to write a sad story. Mostly because you should try to avoid my mistakes, like so it can be useful to other people. I almost everything that people tell you not to do, I did it. Okay, so I had coins on exchanges because I was trying to trade. But if you want to trade because maybe you want to try some of that, it's actually you can learn something. If you do it carefully and in moderation, like everything. But I don't know why I had a lot of them instead of having just a little bit. And I was not trading all of them. I don't know, because maybe I like to see all, all these Bitcoins there, like, oh, look, I don't know. Okay. I was stupid. I thought it was safe enough. But this guy bought the exchange. It was a scammer. This exchange was called MintPal. And then he was trying to, he didn't care about shit coins. He actually took the Bitcoins and he ran away with them. They didn't do anything to him eventually. They arrested him first and then they let him go because this was England. And the police person, I talked with the police person, they say, we don't have the tools to, we thought we could go after him, but we realized we don't have a tool, the forensic tools. What are you talking about? There are a lot of forensic tools, to understand what the guy did with the coins. But they let it go, they let it go. And there is a bankruptcy right now, whatever, but we will never get back our coins. Anyway, so everything that you should not do, I did it. And also here, mostly, like I said, because he took a lot of the, he took the Bitcoin and left the shit coins. And also the shit coins, and these shit coins were things like Monero, Dark Coin. At that kind of time, it was called Dark Coin, and they changed the name to Dash. These are how old I am in this space. Okay, Dash was called Dark Coin, and they were actually doing much better than Bitcoin, like many times better. And so my idea was, I don't like these shit coins, but I never bought a coin thinking I'm going to keep this coin forever. I always thought I kind of miss 2009, 2010. You always, doesn't matter where you come in and Bitcoin, you're always thinking about previous times. So, maybe I'm catching up by investing in shit coins. And my philosophy about that, and maybe the maximalist will hate me, is if you do it carefully and with tools, it could work, right? Where you take some of your shit coins, wait the right time to buy them and to sell them, and you can multiply your Bitcoin long term. But you need it to do it in moderation and carefully. That is the caveat. Now there are some people that say don't do it at all, and they are not wrong. They are not wrong. Okay, they are not wrong. I would never argue against a maximalist. In the end, they are right because it's not trivial. You have to know what you're doing. Some people have been very successful in doing that. Okay, it's just that the average person thinks that they can do it and then they get messed up. So it's the maximalists are wrong. Are right. Sorry, they're like a good parents will tell you not to do this, and they are always right. And then you do it anyway because you want to learn or you're trying to do something different, etc. But I was trying to do something different, and if I added this chart, I would have had, there was a point where I had like they were showing like the balance, and I don't want Sometimes people ask me these things, and I'm actually too naive because this is my nature, and I share too much, but I should not. But sometimes I do it because I feel, first of all, we are a community, and second, if somebody can learn from my experience, why not? But it was showing a lot. That I'm not going into the detail, but it was showing like I had a ton of Bitcoin. If you converted the shit coins, but it was my intention. It was like, okay, I'm going to sell them at a certain point for buy back Bitcoin, but I didn't have the tools. I thought this time is different. We are going crazy. So maybe I'm waiting another doubling of my Bitcoin. Plus, I had an algorithm. And by the way, at a certain point, if people are interested, I can share. But again, use it with moderation, okay? And be careful. But the algorithm was by different. It basically worked in this way. We selected 15, 16, because by the time you go to the 17 or 18, they are really, really shit coins. These were like the less stinky among the shit coins. And so we took, including Bitcoin, but is of course not a shit coin, but we had Bitcoin plus 15 others. Like we select them mostly in terms of cap, market cap. But then we were trading them, and the algo was selecting the one that was. It was mostly based on mean return, so it's kind of contrary to logic, but usually they kind of go together like a flock of birds, right? And if there is one that is falling a little bit behind, it's going to catch up. So the algo was finding this one that was falling behind, invested in it, and then usually will catch up, and then you will do this over and over again. And so, because you were buying it low and selling it high, he was making crazy money. Like in 1 month, we did 6 pair relative to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, you can see, it was going crazy. We were multiplying our Bitcoin. That was the logic. We are never thought we are going to multiply your US dollars. We are multiplying the Bitcoins, but by doing that little game, we got stuck there, with a bunch of coins. And the problem was not even having the coins, because like when I realized we were going down, I actually changed a little bit the algo where now it was also doing shorting, and we could do a lot of money too. The problem is though, you start to have liquidity problems. Like people get out of the market, and you're not able to get rid of these coins so easily, like it was when you were going up. So you have to be careful about that too. That you start to have a liquidity problem. So if you're trying to do this game of buying and selling the shit coins, it doesn't work very well when you're in a short market. And so, I got crushed by that. It was not fun. But if I added this chart and I trusted it, it will have helped me, because I will have sold, here. I will have sold there, and it will have really helped me a lot, because then I will have bought Bitcoin back here, and so on. When I take a shower, many times I do this mental calculations of how many Bitcoin I will have in this moment if I did all this. But you learn. So basically, you're using my experience here to your advantage. And again, I'm not going to convince you to do anything crazy. I'm not telling you, please do this, please do that. You do. I'm just telling you what is possible. And then according to where you are in terms of many Bitcoins you have, how young you are, if you're old, young, if you can take some risk, if you don't take some risk, then you make your own decision. So I'm not going to advise anybody on an individual level. I'm just telling you what can be done. Okay. I personally, I will do some of these because I think it's actually good, and you are actually basically trying to use the knowledge that we have of Bitcoin to make more Bitcoins, because that is the goal. We want more Bitcoins. So, but do it in moderation, do it carefully, maybe as a group. This is why I like you to come to the Discord. If we work as a group, then we can help each other to think through this thing. Because I'm not like the final authority. I'm just one of the individual that is trying to contribute, right? So as a group, we can think through, use the wisdom of the crowds, and then we can do it even more carefully and more precisely, right? So that is the entire idea. We want to know intimately the coin behavior, so we can use both this long-term path, but also these beautiful cycles, this periodicity in our advantage. And I told you before, right? I say in the worst case scenario, no, sorry, in the most idealistic case scenario, that again, it's idealistic, so nobody should ever try to reproduce it, but it gives you kind of an idea, where what the possibilities are, the range. If one did this perfectly, right, with the addition that this is going to continue, that we don't know. This is why we need to be careful and monitor, etc. Because if we knew it in advance, you will be an idiot not to do it. But that is a problem. As precise, as incredibly predictable in comparison with any other asset in the history of the world, we are still not dealing with planets. Okay, so whenever people say, "Oh, this idiot thinks that Bitcoin is a planet," it's an analogy. It's a comparison. I'm very aware that we are dealing with something that is stochastic, that there is no guarantee that it will continue to do this. It could break anytime. Okay, it's just it has done this for 15 years, so it's possible that it will continue to do this for the next few years. That is not crazy or illogical to claim. I don't think so, right? So with all these cautions, then we could use this knowledge to our favor. And like I said, under all these conditions, under all these premises, if you were trying to play these games of selling at the top or buying at the bottom, if you just did that, right, without shorting, for example, that you will be really aggressive and crazy to try to short Bitcoin. Why not with a small amount? Like, why not, right? You don't lose much if you do that with a small amount. If you did all that, we have something like 320 pair. So I made this example where you start with 100,000 and you end up with 32 millions by 2032. So basically, when Bitcoin will start to be close to $1 million, you will have, so 10 years from now, you will have 32 million. So you can really retire on that money with just $100,000 investment. But that is an extreme case. So the idea of thinking about that is now multiply that by a percentage, whatever it is, like even 0.1%. Okay, it's $3 million, right? So multiply by a factor that represents how cautious you want to be instead of being aggressive like that, and then you still see incredible returns. So that is the purpose of this approach. This entire philosophy about this approach. So yeah, now the other thing, so maybe I can take a little break and look at all your questions, and so I interact with you, because I tell you, come to the live session when I just talk nonstop. So let me read some of your comments and interact with you for a few moments, and then if you want, I know that we went for another hour, but let's say we take another 20 minutes, because I want to show you a little bit what happens when you zoom in the chart, and then maybe you want to use it on a daily basis, because most of this decision making happens on cycle basis, right? So over many months or maybe even years. But I think the chart is useful even at the daily level, and in fact maybe intraday, but don't trade intraday. Don't do stupid things intraday. But daily, if you want to do some DCA, you can, because this chart also tells you when the dips are coming, because you could use the dips, to buy more, and they tell you, announcing, and I can tell you more. I will tell you more after we go through the questions. Some developments. So we are trying to do all this automatically with a group of developer I'm talking with. We have experience in do this where then you can set up your investment style. I want to do this, I want to do that, and maybe you decide, I want to buy $10 of Bitcoin every week because maybe you're working, you're putting a certain percentage of your salary in Coinbase. Right now, we will do mostly Binance and Bybit, but eventually we can do something else, like Coinbase or whatever. But and I know that Binance and Binance has a US version, right? But Bybit not. But we will try to do something that is accessible for everybody. But the idea will be, you have some USDT available there, right? And then because you're setting aside some savings for doing DCA. And then the algo comes in and say, okay, where we are in the cycle, where we are in these bands, right? Is it a good time to buy a lot, And so, for example, in the purple area, so then go all in, okay, buy everything. If not, then probably it's a good idea to save this money to when we go back to the purple line, or maybe we just went like we are in the yellow line and we go back to the orange line, and the algo will know that we had a dip, and so it changes the weight and he buys more there than he will have bought in the yellow area, because you say it still buys in the yellow area, but if we by any chance we go down to the orange area, instead of you looking at the chart all the time, that is still cool, that you should do, because you want to be aware of what is going on. But maybe you're busy with work, maybe you're sleeping when that happens or whatever. The algo does that for you. Yeah, and we are testing it. We are, the beauty of doing a strategy like that, and then you can TradingView allows you to back test it, and you can say, okay, what if we did this right over the years? How much we could have made? Then we can adjust it to do the optimal thing, So and if you come to the Discord channel, we have an entire channel where you can give feedback. Where give us some feedback on which features you would like to see. You can do it also here in the comments, etc. But the channel, the Discord channel is meant for that, so we can all help each other, and you can give us feedback on features that you would like to add to the chart or to this app that we're developing. And so we can help each other in thinking about this, how ideal could be. Eventually, if people are interested, we can do things about options, too, because there are these things called, because one thing that you can do always, and something to explore, is that you can leverage, right, or edge, like an investment, with things like options. It's a more sophisticated, but it's one additional tool that people can have. So maybe you open a position there, and then the algo also opens an option at the same time. So if things go in the opposite direction of what you thought, you still can compensate for that. There are all kinds of different variations that we can go through. Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment all these to look at your comments. Okay, can you, so Mikey, can you explain for a new guy why exactly to follow the power law? The first answer is I don't know. I mean, unless you mean how I found out, right? The way I found out is that I knew that the Bitcoin probably followed power laws because it's a network and it's something expected from network to follow power laws, because it's something that comes out from a system that has a lot of feedback loops. That is kind of natural, right? If you think about it, of how Bitcoin works, like the mining, but also how we interact with each other, right? Like people. What I always say is, Bitcoin started like an idea, and the idea is great, but you know, in fact, according to the power law, I can tell you exactly how worth that idea was. You can use the equation, and at day zero, it was worth zero, right? Because if you look at the formula, it says, it's a constant time days to the power of something, right? And if days is zero, zero something is zero, right? So it was worth literally zero. And then day one, you take something to something is one, right? So, sorry, you take one to something is one, and that number in front, that constant, and I will tell you in a moment how I got that constant, is 10 to the minus 17. That everybody gets confused about that because it's such a small number. It simply means it's a kind of a link between price, that is measured in dollars, and days, that is measured in days, right? So it's a transition, it's a link between the two things, and that link is 10 to the minus 17. And so when Bitcoin was 1 day old, it was worth 10 to the minus 17 dollars. And 10 to the minus 17 is what? It's 10 to the 9, right? 10 to the 8. 10 to the 8 is 100 of a million. 10 to the minus 8, 100 million. And 10 to the 9 is a billion. So it was 100 millionth of a billion, whatever that means, or 0 times 16 zeros, $1. So basically nothing, but a quantifiable nothing, right? A quantifiable nothing. So you needed, and they were not enough, right? You needed billions and billions of Bitcoins to make even a dollar, And so as time passed by, that one, now it's two, now it's three, now it's four, right? How many days are passing, and you're raising it to a power that is pretty big, that is 5.8. And that power is big, so that value goes up very fast. And in fact, I made a post, and at a certain point, I want to make an entire video about that. I want to show you this is how much time it took to go to 10 cents. This is how much time it took, and compare what the model says versus what actually did. And they are very close. Like, within days. Like the model said, Bitcoin took this and this time to reach $1. And sometimes it happens a little bit before. In reality, it's sometime later. It depends if the price is above or below the trend. And very close, within days. And so this is what. So the idea came early to me because I started to look at many different properties of Bitcoin, like transactions. I look at transactions, I look at addresses, I look at hash power, and all these things look like they were related to power laws. They were power laws. And one of the tools that we use all the time to get power laws is to show that there is a power law. You make a graph of a log of a quantity versus the log of another, and then you see a straight line. And sometimes, the data looks all wiggly, etc., but you can see there is a general trend that is a power line, a power law. And then what you do a regression, and the regression is not to, look, there is a straight line there, when it's an arbitrary thing, it's not, but it's a tool to derive the slope, because when you do this regression mathematically, it's not that, with a ruler, you're going there and taking a straight line. It's good that your eyes kind of wants to draw a straight line there, because your eyes is kind of an intuitive thing, right? So your intuition tells you it looks like there is a straight line, but use mathematics to calculate the line. And then the line, basically to define a line, if you remember your school math, you need two numbers, right? And a line basically is determined by two numbers. One is the slope, and the other one is the intercept, right? The y-intercept. So the y-intercept here is this number, 10 to the minus 17, and the slope it's the power. It turns out to be the power. In this case, for Bitcoin, 5.8. Now, if you do it with hash power, if you're doing with for hash power, for example, that number is 0.5, that slope. If you do it with addresses, it's 1.7. I remember all this number by heart. And 0.5 has some meaning. 1.7 has another meaning. Another day we can have a video where we go through the meaning of all these numbers, what they tell us about Bitcoin and how it's behaving. So it's really cool. The breakthrough that I had, to answer your question, I don't know if I'm answering it, but hopefully so, was when I decided to do it directly with time. And why time? Well, because time, first of all, time is it's the easiest thing to use for predictions, right? Because if you want to try to understand what happens in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's so much better to have something that is a direct function of time. In the other approaches, I always look at making predictions. So in the end, you have to deal with time. But it was a two-step process. First, I will try to find a relationship between some quantity, let's say addresses, and the price. It look like a power law. And then I will try to find some kind of a model of how the addresses change. And so, and then I don't know, I will look at, of course, of a function of time. I will plot it as a function of time, but I was under the impression, for example, that you will follow some kind of adoption curve, right? This S curve that people are familiar, that represents how technologies are adopted. And then it basically was a two-step process. And I have a post all the way to 2013, 14, where I do exactly that. I do a two-step process. And if you think about it, S to F is exactly that, because go back, if you can, and read S to F original paper, right? Plan B original paper on S to F. This is what he did. He found power law. Is all, maybe not many people realize, but S to F is actually a power law. It's not a power law of time, but it's a power law between S to F and price. So he has this graph where he shows that if we plot S to F, that he calculates, right? It looks like a power law in a log-log graph. It looks like a straight line. And then he adds some addition. So because you see, when you do the second step, you always make some assumptions, like I made. I'd say, oh, it's going to follow an adoption curve. It doesn't. That is where you fail. This is where you fail many times. You say, because it's an addition, right? This is what we do in science all the time. We make some kind of assumption. We can make some kind of guess, educated guess. So his educated guess was, well, what happened to S to F every time we have an halving? Because S to F goes up by a factor of 2 down. Sorry, the flow goes by a factor of 2 down, but S to F means stock to flow, right? You're taking the stock and dividing by the flow. So the flow goes by a factor of 2 down. So you're dividing. So it means that it goes up by 2. S to F goes up by a factor of 2 up every time there is an halving. And then because he found out that the relationship between stock to flow and price was this power law, and the power law in that case, I think I remember that number 2 is 3.2, something like that. So if you have something that doubles and you take in the power of 3.2, you get 10. And so basically his conclusion was, every time you have an halving, the power, the S to flow goes, S to F goes up by 2, but the price goes up by 10. See, so this chain of reasoning. But imagine that you find a power law directly with price. That is what I found, if it is true, right? It looks like there is a power law, and now the power law is directly with time. So you jump all the intermediate steps that sometimes lead you to mistakes because are based on assumptions. So I don't make any assumption. I just say, hey, it looks like there is a power law. The power is this. I'm extrapolating it to the future. Let's see if it works, right? It's an hypothesis, so it's testable. You can test it. You can see if it is true or not. And uh, it's what is called heuristic. So we use in science this word heuristic. That means you're not making any assumptions. You're not coming from any theoretical model. You're just making an observation, and then you're simply saying, based on this observation, and assume the only assumption that you're making that they will continue to do this in the future. But you're also want to observe, want to continue to monitor to see if it is true. So if it is true, then he will continue to do this. And if he continues to do this, this is what happens. This is how it works. And there are advantages in both approaches, right? Because the heuristic one, it's not based on any assumption that could be wrong, but its weakness, it doesn't have like a theory behind, right? Because if I had a theory, then it's you feel a little bit more reassured because there is some logic. But sometimes people get confused also by that, because if my theory is wrong, then I will still make a mistake. So we do both. This is how you do science. You start with something that is all based on observation, then comes to theory, like what happened with Kepler. That, by the way, he found a power law of the motion of the planets, and he was all heuristic because he didn't know why he was doing that. So this also answered your question, right? Why? I don't know. Like Kepler, he didn't know. He had no idea. He just observed it. He thought it was not by chance, that it was something deep, and he was right. It could have been by chance, a bunch of points aligned in a line. Oh, it's chance. How can it be chance, right? It probably absolutely not. In particular with the planets, because it was so perfect, right, and amazing and regular. So in that case, for sure, was not due to chance. This, it could be, right? It could be. It's not that I deny it. It could be that I'm seeing there something that is not there. We are exaggerating the importance of a straight line. There are bubble. There are a lot of things that tell us that it's not the case. But it could be that is still, something that maybe is broken in the future or whatever. And then Newton comes about, right? Newton comes about. This idea of why we have a planets doing this thing was unsolved for a long time. And then he came about and said, oh, look, guys, I have this theory of how the world works. There are these forces that create motion. They are behind motion. We see motion because there are forces acting on things. Now, what a force is, this is how we work in physics. We come up with these things, we find the relations, we think we understand a little bit, we go deeper, but then, if you start to ask too many questions, we don't know either. Like what the force is, what the force is, what creates an acceleration. Okay, what is an acceleration? Is what is caused by a force. It looks like a tautology, right? You go in a circle, and in a certain sense, you know what? It is. And many people think, oh, that is crazy, But and we can have another talk one day about that. I will explain my approach to that. Why it is true that it's a tautology, but it's also a useful one, right? But so and he came up with this idea. There is a force, and then there is one of the forces that we are dealing in the universe is gravity, and gravity works in this way. You had an equation, and when you combine it all together, and plus you had this idea that if you move in a circle, it's an acceleration. It's a form of acceleration. And so then it means if there is an acceleration, it's caused by a force. This is what you say, right? Say we have these things called acceleration that are changes in motion. You can change it by increasing the velocity or changing the direction. Like in a circle, you're moving at a constant velocity, but continuously change the direction. So you can have change in direction, change in velocity, or both, right? So you say, look, now in the case of the planets, is really ellipses. So you actually do both. You change both but they are almost like circle. But he says it's a form of acceleration, and every time you see an acceleration, it has to be due to a force. What the force is in the case of Kepler's law, gravity. It's gravity that is creating that acceleration. So if you put it all together, he showed. You played with all the equations. If one day you want to put up with me and you like a physics class, we can do that in another video. And he derives Kepler's law. So he started from theory, and he shows that you get Kepler's law. Kepler's did the other, right? So it will be beautiful. So if you want, because you're here for Bitcoin and not for physics, or maybe for both, the link to Bitcoin is that S2F, in a sense, wanted to do what, Plan B with S2F, in a sense, wanted to do what Newton did, right? They started with some theory that S2F is important, it makes sense, we change the, prices of commodities are determined by stock to flow. We change the stock to flow, so it makes sense that we will see a change in price. He had like a nice theory. I marry him for that, because at least he tried to have a theory behind it. It's beautiful, when that happens, and if a theory is correct. If I don't care if my model is broken, right? Because before Kepler, we were other model of a universe. If you're a scientist, you try to understand things, you make your contribution, say, this is my understanding up to this point, and then somebody comes about with a much better theory, and you're happy, you're super happy, because your goal is not that to say, see, my theory, I'm better than anybody else. Your goal as a scientist is to understand things, and if somebody comes along and makes you understand things better, is great. You join forces. I saw that happening in conferences. When one time it was this people, they were presenting this new idea about something, and this professor that was in the audience, that worked in the opposite camp, was witnessing this, basically his life work being destroyed live by these guys. And he was not really destroyed. In any other field, if it was politics, if it was anything else, this person will have been upset, because basically you're telling me that everything I believe in my life, or everything I said, is wrong. He at the end of a lecture, everybody clapped, and he went there and he shook hands of these people, because he was super happy that finally we get it. Finally we understanding all the problems that I had, that my model didn't make sense of it, we resolve them. So as a scientist, you're happy. And you will not be forgotten, because actually your work helped. It was one of a step that was necessary, even just by saying your model was wrong, to understand Bitcoin. So if my model is broken at that point, I hope that I contributed, and people will tell Giovanni, your approach was useful, because now we understand better Bitcoin. So anyway, this is the story behind it, of how I found it. I simply plotted in a log plot, and I look at this graph and say, what the heck, because people have said that before. When you look at the chart, the log chart, and you see this straight line, you cannot unsee it. That is probably one of the best comments I ever heard about this model. And other people, like the Fred Krueger, I hope that I pronounce his name correctly, he said the same thing. He said, and he's a mathematician, he has a PhD in math from Stanford. And people that understand, they know. They look at that graph and say, okay, it looks like it's having this power law behavior. It's crazy. So this is what I look at, and it convinced me. Same thing with Berger. He became a fanboy because he looked at my Reddit post, and he was convincing to him just by looking at it. And then, of course, he went back, started to do all the math, etc., and was convinced even more, because this is what you do. You cannot stop by just looking at the graph. You want to calculate. You want to, do different type of tests. We did stability tests to see if it is. This all what is going on beyond the power law. I just answered one question. I'm like 10 times worse than Putin in explaining stuff. At least my explanation are, based on reality. Anyway, there is a link I want to show here. This one. No, all my links are about the long trend, where I take all the data, and when I fit, there is no the adaptive. The only one, this one, you can access it and you can have it. You can look at it every day, every time of the day, and you can interact, you can play with it, you can zoom in, if you get the indicator. So you will need to get, so the steps to do that are get the Patreon. There is, I will put a link here, but I put it many times on X, and it's also on our YouTube. If you go under community, there is a link to the Patreon. So if anybody wants this indicator, not the second one is going to be published, I said, in a few days from now. But the first, and then you will have both, but I will make it two available. But the first one is available by becoming a member of Patreon. So even the lowest level give you access. And it's just $5 a month. And it's mostly, you're supporting my work and my team, because actually my son is also in this thing, and we're bringing in other people. So you're supporting a team that is working on this with a relatively reasonable contribution, right? It is not anything crazy we ask from people. But also, it's a way of giving some value to something, instead of just giving it for free. But, we know from Bitcoin, it's important to give value to things. Anyway, so, and then, also gives you access to the community, so interact with other people. I'm trying to be there every single day, interacting with, asking questions, answering questions, but also, if you need any assistance, contact me anytime. If I'm not sleeping, this is the first thing I do when I wake up, and also the last thing I do when I go to sleep. I would really care about people using the indicator and being useful for them. And so I always check everybody got the link, got accepted if I just join. If you have a technical problem, if you are not familiar with Trading View, first of all, we can have another video only on Trading View, how to open it, how to get it, how the different functions. If people find that useful, we can do that. But also I can show you. I don't have a problem. We can also go on a one-to-one call, or maybe we can make a small group or whatever. So don't ever feel shy to contact me on DM and ask me, can you show me this? Can you explain me this? I'm a teacher. I love that. You never bother me. Okay. So if I'm sleeping, I cannot answer, but if I am around, I will give you priority, because to me, teaching and making sure that people understand, or I'm helping somebody to understand something, that is makes me happy, so you never bother me. Okay. So contact me, and I will help you. So if you never play with Trading View before, it's a very useful tool. It's actually, I think it's free. There is a paid subscription, and you get more perks, and this is what I have, but you don't have to have a paid version. You need to pay, to be part of Patreon and being a supporter, but then that gives you access to the indicator as a basic benefit of being a member. Okay, is there a link? Okay, can you explain the full model that shows the cycles? I can. I'm trying to go through a lot of information, but basically, I think I did a few minutes ago. I said, all what I did was to synchronize the first peak that we ever had after the halving, and then just assume that we have a 4-year cycle. And it seems to work very well. And the idea of the clock that I made online was, we have this clock that is a 4 years periodicity, but the hand of the clock grows with time, right? Because it represents the price. So as the clock goes around, the hand of the clock becomes larger and larger and larger, right? And that makes, instead of making a circle, it makes a spiral. And the beauty of that is that spiral follows the power law. It's the power law. And the price is on top of the spiral, and the spiral, you can write an equation. You can write a beautiful mathematical equation that represents that spiral, So it's predictable, and you can extend it over time. In fact, I think if you go online, you look at the online version of the clock, it has a prediction. It has a prediction all the way to the next stop. We can extend it, but I did it up to the next top, and the next top is 209,000. This is what the prediction says for the top, and it tells you two things: when and how much. So it tells you it will be at 209,000, and it should be around Christmas, around the New Year of 2025. This one is going to happen. Okay, what is your country of origin? I am Italian. I know many people don't. You hear I have an accent, but many times they say, "Oh, are you Russian or whatever?" No, I'm Italian. Was born in Genova. It is a town on the northwest side of Italy. But my parents are from the south, so I am a southerner that moved. My parents moved in the north of the country. The million, when? So million, when will bot will be available? So Omar Silva asked that. The bot will be available. We want for sure to launch it before the halving. So basically we have 1 month or something. We want to launch it before then. We are going probably to have a beta testing. So if you join the Patreon, probably everybody that is in the Patreon will be beta tester. Plus, we have a website where you can write your email if you don't want to join the Patreon. But we have already probably like almost like 1,000 people right now who want to join. And so we will probably give precedence to the Patreon for the beta testing. And maybe if we need more people, we can get from that other pool of people that sign up on the website. The website, again, you find it. There are links in the YouTube channel. It's called bitposeidon.com. The reason is Poseidon because, Neptune is the god of the sea, and so he's master of the waves. So you basically asking for Poseidon to help us with the waves, to learn the waves of Bitcoin. This the meme behind why we use Poseidon. When the million, according to the model, if the model is correct, and so there are two things, right? One thing is the top, and so the top we should reach 2 more cycles. If not the next cycle, but the next one, we should reach 1 million. So this is what the predictions say. Now, what about the trend? Just about that. So probably it's possible that we reach. I will have to look. It will be interesting to see what the model says exactly. I have the next cycle memorized, but I don't have the other 2 cycles memorized. But we should do that. But I think probably we are above 1 million for the second cycle. 2 cycles from now. And so probably we reach, let's say we reach, I don't know, we will check, but let's say we reach 1.4, then we usually crash about 50% from the top, something like that. And by the way, these distances between top and bottom are becoming smaller and smaller with time. So let's say we go down then to 700, maybe 700,000, and we never go lower than that. And so it will take a little bit longer than for the trend. The trend is good because the trend tells you, this is really the fair value for Bitcoin. It can go a little bit lower, a little above, but this is where we should be. Like right now, for example, the fair value of Bitcoin, it's about 60,000. Is where we should be. So even if it is right now, it looks like wood. We have 54,000, amazing. It's still undervalued. So, and that value, 1 million for the trend line, probably is going to happen in 2033, something like that. That is the trend value then. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you have a problem with the live stream. Interrupted, like frozen, something like that. I also have a very good connection. I don't know if it is my camera. I notice that sometimes it's blurry. Probably I need to buy a new camera. like a cheap camera. And I need probably to. My microphone is good. I hope you hear me well. I think I bought like a decent microphone, but I still have a bad camera. So it's possible that my camera doesn't send the information fast enough. I don't know. So I will buy a new camera. Okay, I will buy a new camera. Um, Smooth here. Thank you, Giovanni. Yes, you don't have to stay all the time. I know I tend to talk forever because I like the topic and this is what I do, But you can, they are going to be recorded. I'm going to leave them online. So you can always go back and revisit and check. Some people ask me to put times, and my son is a very good editor because this is what my son does. He's like an expert in videos. He actually went to university for that. So he will probably do that. So you can actually click on the most interesting part for you and so on. If you think that Bitcoin, okay, Fibonacci, I like that name, Fibonacci. In Italian, you're probably Italian, I guess, because it means small little Fibonacci. So he's like a little Fibonacci. When you put in Italian, it means small, cute. And Walter Rizzo is Italian. His name is Italian. I'm always happy when I see Italian people. Sorry, hopefully, just like it reminds me of home. So Fibonacci, by the way, he was Italian. He was from Pisa, if I remember well, and he was a famous mathematician. And he found these beautiful patterns in nature. The spirals and so on. They are related to the power spiral. They are not the same, but they are related. They are in the same family. Hello, what is more likely for this point? Pullbacks to a lower level or continue to break out? So, this is one of the things that you actually can use, kind of links to what I wanted to talk about is by the way, see Xenia, she's my girlfriend. Saying, hey, Xenia, ciao. So she just joined. Anyway, hopefully I don't shame her or something. But anyway, so you can use the chart. So even if the real intention of a chart is to look at the long-term path, and where we are in the cycle, so that is the real proper use of a chart. It looks like it really works also on smaller scale. Like, for example, notice how it seems to find these kind of resistance and support levels, right? So, for example, here around September, the price was very stable, and it seemed to follow this very precise line. So all these lines are local because we are using just local data. So in a sense, you will expect that they follow the trend, but it's surprising because they are all based on the power law. The equations behind that line is not like a straight line. It's an attempt to fit a power law over a smaller region of time, and it seems to work. And it seems that it's associated with what Bitcoin does in terms of its behavior. So it looks like it's following that line, at least for several days, sometimes months, and then it jumps to the next level. So, is it me looking at these and finding patterns that are not there, or you see the patterns too? Because it looks to me that they are real, like around September here, almost for a month. In fact, it started like a mid-August of 2023, and the follow that purple line there, right, all the way to mid-October, and then the price jump up, right, and it started to cross these lines, the orange one, and then it seems to settle on this orange line. And again, it did that from December all the way to February, right now, for example. And it dipped a little bit, so it's also useful in that sense. Like, okay, it seems that it's going away from that, but then it came back, okay, and now it went to the yellow one. And actually, once I started to see this pattern, I make prediction, because I did say before it went to the yellow line, I say, oh, it seems that is leaving the orange line to go to the yellow one, that I think is going to be the next resistance. Okay, so it will be completely silly if I couldn't make prediction, and it was all after the fact. But actually, I made a prediction in that sense, because I posted on X, and I say it's going to the yellow line, and the yellow line will be a resistance. And in fact, you can see that for several days it kind of settled around the yellow line. And then it dipped slightly down. And again, you can use it. How you can use it? Let's see if I can zoom in. Okay, you should be able still to see the live chart, right? So let's zoom in. Let's zoom in on the and you zoom in these charts by basically scrolling, like I'm using my wheel, and then I drag. So this is how you use it, right? So you drag the chart and you go in the area that you want to look at. And I'm using day. So by the way, if you the best setting, and if you come to the Discord channels, I have instructions. So you go under resources, and there is like a very precise instructions on how to get it, how to get the indicator, how to set it up. So I like this dark theme, because I think these white lines look. No, actually, we will not be able to see the white line. I think you can change the color, but it's a pain in the ass because there are so many. So I suggest you to use the dark theme, and I also have instructions on how to get the dark theme, or you can look it up online. But anyway, so you set it up there with this dark theme, and then you go here. I think you do, yeah. See how it says, yeah. You see, it says logarithmic. So here say auto fits. So you can deselect it if you don't want to auto fit, but choose the logarithmic, because it looks much better when you are under logarithmic. So basically, it's taking the logs. You cannot take log of the x-axis. We don't know how to do it, because usually people don't take the log of time for assets, right? We take the log of time for many different things. It's not unheard of, but for assets, it's unusual. People don't usually do it. With Bitcoin, it makes sense because, of his behavior, but with the other assets, usually people don't do it. So they don't have it as a function. So the best thing we can do is what is called a log linear, right? It's a log linear chart. And so we take a log of a y-axis. So it's actually easier to see these changes in price from small prices to large prices. And then and so then the best so because when you go under BTC, right? So this is how it works. And by the way, we can try to do it another time, but there is nothing to block you from looking at other assets with this chart. You can go here and select any asset. You can take SP500, anything you like, other coins. So in theory, you can look at other assets using this. For Bitcoin, the best result in terms of look, but also meaning of what you're looking at, it's what is called the all-time history index. So you're going to scroll, and so instead of USDT, so if you say USDT, you will get mostly. So basically, USDT, when you do this, you're looking at the futures, the future contract, because a lot of these exchanges have these futures, right? Basically, you don't buy Bitcoin, you buy a piece of paper. It's a little bit like an ETF, right? So you're buying like an equivalent of an ETF is like an instrument, a financial instrument that is linked to the price of Bitcoin, but it's not Bitcoin. You're not. So even in the exchanges, if you want real Bitcoin, you have to look for spot. You're buying the spot. And so here we say spot crypto, but because you can also buy spot with the USDT, but a lot of them. So I said something incorrect. That USDT means that means future. You can have both. Sorry for that. But usually this is what is about. Yeah. No, I think for these exchanges it's always USDT because this is the only thing you can use to buy. You can also use USDC, but if you go on Coinbase, then you can use actually dollars, right, directly. I think I'm not using Coinbase for a long time. I don't like them. I should not say that, but okay. But anyway, right? So my suggestion is, and nobody stops you to look at the chart using all of these. You have many different choices, and every exchange will have a slight variation of the price because the price is never the same in all the exchanges. They are all very similar, but not identical. But because we're looking at the overall trend, etc., it doesn't matter if we take like an index. We think this index is basically an average. We are taking an average between all the different exchanges. The reason why we want to select this one, all-time history index, is because it has the longest history. And so when we do this fitting, it's the fitting that works best. Because even if we do it adaptively, it's all based on previous results anyway. And so it gives us the best chart, the chart that comes closer to the theoretical behavior that we are studying when we do these charts offline. So this is what I suggest, but you can use anyone, but this is what and then days, again, is the best way to look at, But you can also use 4 hours. I noticed that 4 hours works okay. I use it all the way to hours. Now, if you go below that, it starts to lose meaning, because these are really this power law behavior. It shows up over a relatively long period of time. If I can find a way of making it work for smaller scale than hours, I will see. But right now, the chart is not meant to do that. Okay, it has limitations, and that is one of them. But even at the day level, right, you can learn a lot of things. Like, for example, if you look at these, see, okay, let me close this so it doesn't come in the, because you can see, you can do this. So look at this, right? So the price seemed to follow the orange line for some time, right? So in this case, it was almost like some kind of resistance, right? Because the price was not going above. It was almost like a ceiling. It was a resistance. And so, what can you do in that case? Okay, I don't know. I mean, you can use it to maybe to doing some DCA at that level, because it seems to be pretty stable there. For several days, and then it changed, right? So it changed, and the philosophy that we have when we do this DCA, it's a proposal. It's basically as we go closer and closer to the line, and some people will make the meme and say, "Hey, it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin." Not really. There are good time when to buy Bitcoin, and there are less good time. You probably don't want to buy at the top if you can avoid it, right? If you are close to the top and you can avoid to buy Bitcoin because your grandma is buying Bitcoin, and so probably it's not a good time. That joke we say when your grandma starts to buy that asset, probably it's time to get out, right? So you don't want to follow FOMO. You want to be using this chart in a aware way. So the idea of this philosophy will be that you put some money aside to do DCA, right? Because you want to make every month, you want to save some Bitcoin and you want to stack. In that case, my suggestion will be, if you're on Coinbase, let's see if we can, if people like Coinbase or like Gemini or whatever, we can try to use these exchanges too. But or maybe even I don't know if Robinhood allows it, because one time we tried to do something interactive with Robinhood, and then they ban us, something like that. They don't have like an API. So basically, this API allow you to interact with some of these exchanges, right? But Robinhood I don't think they allow, but we will look it up. So we will look it up at different options. But the idea will be stack, USD somewhere, don't convert it yet into Bitcoin, or if you have, if you went to an exchange like Binance or Bybit, convert them into USDT. So make sure you have a bunch of USDT available, because the algo is going to look for having something to buy Bitcoin. So you need to have, it doesn't know. It's probably is not going to have. We will see, but I want to have as minimum possible information about your stuff, right? So I don't want to know what is your balance. I don't want to know anything else. We will not have the keys. You will have an app of it is asking you for the keys, but it will be all encrypted, so we don't have that information. We don't own the information to your exchange. And then we will have instructions on how to do it, etc. So you make sure when you get the API, for example, that you can do this in the exchange. You say, hey, make sure that nobody can take out the coins out. You give a permission to the API, and it will be only trading permissions. Okay, so nobody can steal your crypto. Plus, it will be all encrypted. We don't know what it is, and we will not do that. But if I can have even less information, like the balance on your account, I don't want to know what is the balance of your account or anything. So the app will we take the minimum possible information. That is, it's assuming that you have some USDT available. So if it tells it, I want to buy $20 worth of Bitcoin every week, it's there. And if something happens, it will let you know. It will send you a message, an email, say, hey, something went wrong. We were trying to buy some Bitcoin, but we didn't have the USDT available, right? But the idea will be you stack it there, and then when we will give weights. So let's say we are in the purple line here, and it's it's time here, right? You want to go full here. You want to have 100%. In fact, if you saved, they say want to buy $100. Maybe it's going to try to buy 120. So it's going to give a lot of weight to when we are here. And then as we go away, we are going to put less weight. And the idea will be, because hopefully you're not going there and spend it for other things. You're going to stack it, right? You're stacking all these USDT so we can buy at the right time. And if there is a dip, right, where it goes down, let's say it went all the way, because in theory we could do it smoothly, and maybe eventually we can do it, but basically it's following the logic of these bands, right? So when we go band by band, because you still want to have a relatively large change in the price, to make this efficient. And so when it goes down, so it's like a grid. It's like there are these strategies where you do grid trading, but here you don't lose anything, because you're doing it. It's not like you don't risk that you bought here, and then the price goes down, and you get stuck or something. It's all DCA, so in theory it's okay to buy whenever, but it's going to do it in a clever way, right? So if you go here back to the red line, let's say we went there, now it's going back to actually try to buy more there, because we had a dip. When we say, hey, buy the dip, well, buy it when you have a deep opportunity. Why not to buy more there? And again, you don't need to look at the chart every day. You should, because you want to know as much as possible about Bitcoin. But if you're in vacation, if you're sleeping or whatever, it will do it for you. And so that is the philosophy behind what the TAPO will do. I think it will be really, really useful to a lot of people. And if you look at the chart and the indicator, you know where it is. Like, for example, somebody told me, oh, did it predict that the price will jump? Not really, because I will be dishonest, right? If I say that it doesn't try to do that. We don't have a predictive power at this level. We have predictive power over the long period, but not at this level, but it's still, there is a lot of information there. Like, for example, and again, maybe I should need to start to make more posts, predictive posts, so people can see that you can use it for that. But I did say that this line was going to be some kind of resistance, and it did, because you see the price stay there, and it seemed it didn't want to go up, right? In fact, started to go a little bit, but you could have say that this was kind of a bullish signal, because it was deviating from there. The bars were becoming smaller and smaller, so I mean that the price was stabilizing. And then, in fact, we had a green bar. There was a very bullish sign that there was some kind of reversal there, right? And in fact, notice what happened. It broke that trend. Now, what will be the next prediction? The next prediction that now, if we zoom out, the price probably is moving to the green line. Let's see if it does that. See here, I'm trying to actually extend the lines to the future. So it's going to find somewhere, maybe the next line, because all these lines are now there by chance. They are all supposed to mean something from a statistical point of view. And by the way, these white lines are supposed to follow the price. So as the price is moving up, they are coming up. I couldn't make fine lines everywhere because there is a limit on many lines. TradingView allows you to draw, and basically we reach it. So, but it's supposed to follow the price. So when we go in this transition area, we should be all the way to the green region, and maybe that will be the next resistance, right, before we actually cross the blue line. So, this is how you use this chart, by kind of looking where we are in the overall pattern. It seems to follow this pattern pretty well. And then you can say, is it a resistance? Is a support level? Like, for example, this was a resistance, but we had also this support. Like, it would have been very surprising if we went below that orange. It could have happened, but probably unlikely. So again, from a DCA point of view, we probably didn't want to go all the way to a orange line here, this red line here. Probably want to wait until we reach the orange line, and then when we reach, we will have to say, okay, that is a good dip, and we reach kind of a critical level, because this line has been like a support in the past. Here was a support, because I see the price was trying to go below in the end, and we broke a little bit at support, but then we went back again, right? So it seems to be some kind of a important level. Well, let's do some DCI there. Well, this is how you use this chart on a more granular way. And this chart about the oscillations, right? You can zoom in, you can move it around. Probably want to kind of zoom out a little bit, and then when you zoom out, I need to fix this where you actually can keep the zooming level. But you see here, you can see better what the price is doing between the two spirals, and then you can kind of compare it with previous cycles, right? You can say, if you are curious to see what did we do around this time, the previous cycle, right? So here, for example, we're very close, and we can add some more information. Like, for example, I think it will be useful to put the hour, right, in this convention. Like I say, I think right now we are 6:20 or something like that in the clock, and say, okay, what did it do? What the price? Was it very close to the red line? Was it close to the yellow line? Did it tend to go up, or did it tend to go down? And so then you can scroll and go to the previous equivalent cycle. It was here, right? And kind of zoom in. This chart is not yet perfect because I'm working on it, but supposedly, you can zoom in and look at an equivalent time. Now it's a little bit difficult because we don't have the hours yet. When we have the hours, you can go exactly there and see what happened, right? So, for example, I don't know, let's say it was here, right? But this were kind of where we were. it looks like we were going right. Maybe this was the COVID. This was the COVID, right? There was that event that made the price go really down, but it was kind of more unique. So the line seemed to be closer to the red line in general, and then it started to go out. So you can make this comparison. You even go to the previous cycle, so you can see what Bitcoin did at a different time. In the cycles, in the previous cycles, how it was behaving, and so on. You can always zoom in at that particular time and see what it did, right? So in this case, for example, I think this is a more typical behavior for Bitcoin during these cycles, that this tends to be closer to the bottom, because it's when we are leaving the bear and we are going towards the bull. So we are expecting to be close here, and then little by little started to go up. That is kind of what it did eventually, right? But anyway, so these are the way that use all this information. Okay. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay. Fibonacci say, I'm just Italian American. You're not. That is not just Italian American, but it's great. I need to learn like, yes. I'm so sad that a lot of Italian Americans don't know Italian. Like with the Indian, with the Chinese, they teach the language to their kids, but I don't know what happened with Italian Americans. They sometimes know some words, mostly bad words, or some, mafia words or things like that, but, not real language, and it's a pity. And you should learn, but it will be great because it's, it's a link to your heritage. The best thing, if you can find that, like my experience with languages is that, like, I studied English in Italy at school for 5 years. And when I came here, I couldn't say anything. It was like crazy. I couldn't understand people. I couldn't interact. It was like everybody like seemed to, is this English? It didn't sound English to me at all. And it was really difficult. But, the best way was to watch TV, to get a girlfriend and talk with her every day, talk to people. Finally something clicks. So it's actually pretty magical. Like the day before, I couldn't understand anything. When day after, something clicks in your brain, when all of a sudden, like, oh, people start to make sense. I understand what we're talking about. At least this is what happened to me. And I think it happened to other people that I talk with, but it's really kind of an amazing experience. So if you have a chance to go to Italy and spend some time there, it will be great. It's the best way to learn language. You have to be there, interacting with people. So I don't know what was the technical problem, Martin, but hopefully it was resolved. What level on the low level and high end of 2025 Bitcoin top will invalidate your model? So this is, and then maybe we can end there because we went for a long time. I always intend to make it like 30 minutes when we end up talking 2 hours. But let's end with that question, and then I really thank you to be here and interact with me, etc. And please join our Patreon and come to the Discord if you can. Okay, but so I answered this before, but it's a valid question that comes up all the time. So there are two things, right? And we do need to, at a certain point, I do want to come up with something that says, hey, if this happens, then something is happening to the model where it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Because it's a valid way of doing this kind of predictions where you need to be honest and say also what will make the model invalid. This how you should do. Now, sometimes other people do that for you, but as the creator of model, you should be consistent and do that. But there are two things, right? Because the model, so really the main power law model is only the general trend. So the bubble, we do it because people are interested, they are useful, it's important to use this information from the bubble. So it's an addition, it's like a modification of a main idea to also account for the bubbles, right? And that part, while I think I got it, has a lot of assumptions. So more assumption you add, more places where you're going to be wrong. So one assumption that I made, for example, is based on this idea that these peaks are falling down. So if you look at the progression of the peaks of a bubble, it's something that almost everybody is familiar with and has noticed. So how large, how big, relatively to the general trend that these bubbles, these peaks look like, seems to go down in time. And in fact, I was actually pretty surprised when I plotted them on a graph. They also fall, they don't follow a power law, but they fall on exponential decay in a pretty precise way, where actually can, almost draw with your hand the trend. So in fact, the best way to do it is to plot it in a log linear chart where you have only the log, and then the x-axis actually the number. So pick number 1, pick number 2, pick number 3. So if you do that, then they look like on an exponential path. And so that means they are going down very quickly, and also in a predictable manner. Because if they were random, it would be difficult to make a prediction of where the next one is. But they seem to follow an exponential decay. Now, see, these were all the assumptions coming up. We are using 3 points to make a fitting. And, first of all, with 2 points, you can make always a straight line, even if the path was all crazy. Oh, look, I have 2 points. I draw a straight line. You can always draw a straight line through 2 points, right? It will be such a stupid model, because give me 2 points, there is always a straight line between them, right? Now, the third point seems to follow on that straight line. So straight line in a log linear chart, it means exponential. This is what it means. Instead of going up, it's an exponential is going down. I'm talking about what I really took the ratio between the bottom and the top. And again, I don't remember the guy. There is a guy, I don't know, maybe if anybody knows, it is online. There is a guy, I'm so bad with names. I follow him because he actually makes sense, a lot of sense in his analysis. He has an entire channel, very popular. And there was a time when he say, oh, I think I found a pattern between the bottom and the top, the bottom and the top. And he was saying, because I think he was doing it with some rough math. I don't think he's like a physics or math guy, but he's using common sense. It's nice because, if there is somebody that does it in a more sophisticated way, and then somebody else does it in a less sophisticated way, but kind of based on common sense, and he finds the same pattern, then it's good because more people are confirmed. And what he noticed is he claims that he sees a factor of 10 of 5 something. Again, he was attributing a lot of meaning to the fact it was 5.3 or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's basically 5. But it was like some factor of 5 in the reduction of this ratio between the bottom and the top. So if you measure how far we went, I think percent-wise, how much we went percent-wise from the bottom to the top for every cycle, it looked like it followed a pattern. And what he claimed, and again, sorry that I don't remember his name or his channel name, but he claimed, maybe I can put it in the comments, but he claimed he found this regular pattern. So I was not the one to find it. I thought that there was, but I didn't have the time to go and check, but he did, and I was impressed by his analysis. So I wanted to verify, and I did it in a more mathematical way, that is basically measure that quantity, plot it in a graph, see if there is a pattern that makes sense, If it is not a straight line and in a linear chart, the next step is to see if there is a log linear type of path, that means an exponential. And if it was, it looked like a nice straight line. And so that means there is an exponential, and then you fit it, you get what you get is the decay rate, how fast this decay is happening, and then you can project it to the future. This is why we do these things, because if you see a pattern, then you can project it in the future. And so the projection to the future is the chart that you see that I posted often in my site, where the peaks became smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's not, I didn't do it by coming up with some idea of how we're going. It's all based on math. It's all based on what we see. It's this heuristic approach that they follow. The caveat with that is, while the general power law trend is based on thousands of points, all the days that we have available, I use only 3 data points for my decay of the peaks. And I am the first one. In fact, you can calculate, you can use stats and say there are 2 numbers that are important when you do these stats. And now you can dozens of numbers if you want. You can calculate all kinds of different things. But the 2 main that usually people look at are what is called the R square. It's basically a measure of how well the fitting works with your model, in this case an exponential. And the other one is how statistically significant is, that is the P, what is called the P. And the P needs to be, this is a convention, but it kind of makes sense. Basically, smaller that number is, so basically what that number tells you is how likely that the pattern that you found is due to chance. So smaller the number, better it is, because it means it's less likely to be due to chance. And what is usually accepted, not in physics, because in physics you will probably not publish your paper. Depends on the field, if it is like maybe some astronomical event where we have only few data, because maybe we just see few of these things happening, But in majority of the field of the experiments in physics, we want a P that is like very, very small, like 1 billion or something like that, or even smaller. But with, for example, medicine or sociology, all these very weak fields, like I changed career at a certain point. I went from physics to neuroscience, and there was like, what? You can publish a paper with P0.05, right? I think that the threshold is 0.005, right? That actually they make jokes about that, all kind of things. That means you have a 5% chance that is due to 5% probability that is due to chance. And that seems very small. And in fact, it kind of is, right? But hey, will you make a drug based on that? Will you make something like a policy change on some kind of important law or important financial decision that involves millions of people? They do it all the time. Based on this, in physics will never be accepted. But unfortunately, with sociology, sometimes this is all what you have, because there are regularities in people's behavior or even in biology, but they are much less precise than in physics. So when I measure the P, so for example, the P for the log, for overall log, it's really small. I don't remember what it is, but basically almost zero. It's really, really, really small. But when you do it for the peak, it's not even that number. It's not, I don't remember what it is. It's like 0.1, 0.15. That means that you don't have enough data, because if we continue to follow that exponential path, that people will become very quickly very small. But because we have only 3 data points, it tells you don't have enough stats to make a statement there. You cannot trust it. It tells you there is a trend, there is something there, but tells you also, because it's not like 0.8, tells you it's 0.12 or 1.5. It means there is a trend. There is a kind of a trend where, but it's not yet statistically significant. And so that is the big caveat. So when I say, hey, it looks like these peaks are becoming smaller, and my prediction is based on that. So when I say 209, is based on expecting a decay that is similar to what we observe. So that is the caveat. So about my model, so that part of the model could be blown out of the water because it's the weakest part of the model, and it's like an add-on. It's not really the core of the model, that is the power law. It's an addition. It's trying to predict the bubble. That, it doesn't have anything to do technically with the general trend. And so that part, I cannot tell you 100% that is. First of all, you can never do 100% with anything, in science. But it's actually the weakest part, and in fact, is based on something that is not even statistically significant. So I could be wrong. I could really be wrong. I'd rather be wrong on the lowest level and tell people this what basically I'm saying, this is what I'm saying. If everything works exactly like it did before, this is what we should expect. Could it be lower? Yes, it could be lower, because what if it doesn't even go there? Could it be more? Yes, it could be more, because even if it looks there is a pattern, maybe the pattern is broken. But the patterns of the three peaks, okay? I don't think so. While I say before, I will be the first one to be okay with the model, the general model being wrong, in particular if we have a substitute. I will be sad because all of a sudden we have this nice tool and now we don't have it. But if somebody comes along and say, I have an even better model, and I think this is what is happening, and your model is an approximation of mine, I will be the first one that is happy, for the overall length trend. But the entire philosophy, if you want to be consistent, is that given it is a power law, one of the property of a power law is what we call scale invariant. That if you plot it in that way, where you have the log of a y and the log of a x, then it looks at a straight line. And what it means, straight lines are reliable. It means that whatever it did when it was 10 cents, it did it when it was $1, when it was $10, when it was $100. So it will not change. When it tries to go from, 50,000 to 500,000, it will continue to do what he has done before. So that is this is why I say this model is more than just drawing a line. It comes with all this philosophy, this understanding, etc. Now, if a model is wrong, the philosophy is also wrong, right? But there is at least one, you can be wrong in many different ways. One way is being inconsistent, right? You say one thing in one part of your explanation, then in another you say something else. The model is very consistent. Everything the model says is extremely consistent. So I'm trying to be consistent first. So the consistency of a philosophy and the model is it will continue to do. And this is why also it's not just TA, it's not, you're drawing a line in the past and you're extending the future. No, this entire idea that the system is scale invariant. So it's supposed to do that. If your theory is correct, it's supposed to continue to behave in this scale invariant way. Scale invariant means scale invariant. It means like when it goes to 500,000, when it goes to 5 million. Now, will it continue to do that when it goes to 50 million? I don't know, because, first of all, it's many, many years in the future. And second, who knows what is going to happen to the world economy by the time. Also, we start to reach levels where Bitcoin is more valuable than the entire world, so like what even that means, So this probably the model will start to break at that point. But from here to a million, I'm very, 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 very confident that the model will continue to behave like I behaved before. And it could be wrong, but the model, the beauty of a model, that also will tell us that something went wrong. Now, we need to have, I agree with you, we need to have some
method, and I'm thinking about many different ones. We already did kind of like that, right? We, for example, we went in the past and we tried to fit it over and over and over using only past data, and then see how these parameters are changing, like the n is changing. Yeah, it changes, but it kind of oscillates around a stable value. That means it doesn't have to do with the model. It has more with, the fact that sometimes you give a little bit more emphasis to the peak if you're trying to fit it when you're close to the peak. Sometimes you're giving more emphasis to the bottom when you're trying to fit it close to the bottom. And so it's more like a fitting problem than a model problem. And so the way to resolve that is basically to say, well, the real n is the average, right? So if it is oscillating up and down, maybe the true value is the average value, right? If it was like going away and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, this n, right, the exponent, then we will have a problem with the model. We don't see that. So if that could be a test where if we start to see the n leaving that average and not coming back, then the model will be broken. Now, if there is a sudden change where we all of a sudden see that it doesn't follow the slope or whatever, then we could see it immediately. But maybe it drifts, maybe it drifts away. Who knows, right? So maybe the power law is an approximation to something more complicated. That in fact, at a certain point, I had a friend of mine. He wrote a paper. It's I can give a link, but he wrote this entire articles telling that maybe the fact that we see the power law is an approximation to stock to flow. So stock to flow is the real model, that what he was trying to say, and the power law is an approximation to that. I think is the other way around, where stock to flow, in a certain sense, I think, and when I say that, Plan B gets mad. I talk with him. We are supposed actually to have a debate at a certain point. We are thinking about that. But when I say this, it gets mad. I'm going to say, but be careful. I mean something very specific. He rediscovered the power law, in a sense. What I mean with that is when he did that graph of a stock to flow versus price, that power law that he says, the power law is nothing else than the power law in time. And so when he made conclusions that a change in the stock to flow will also result in a big, huge change in price, it was based on this observation, but I think it was spurious. It was spurious because the real power law is really the power law in time. And somehow by doing what he did, they kind of showed this regularity in the price of Bitcoin versus time. It's an idea. I need to think more about it. That is the case, but I think that is what happened. But like I say, it could be the other way around. That maybe the power law is an approximation of something more complicated. But maybe stock to flow. I doubt it. I have I should make a video one day just saying all the things I have against S2 flow. It's not personal, just about the model. Why I think the model is not working, but also the philosophy behind or whatever. But it's not completely invalidated. Next cycles will tell us which model is the true one, or at least more than which model is the true one, which model doesn't work. And I think his model will be invalidated the next time. See, because and maybe I finish here. My model, because I'm focusing on the long term, this power law can be invalidated, but we will need to go beyond this cycle, because this cycle is not going to tell if this model is going to work or not. Because basically, once we go above that blue line and we go in this bubble territory, the addition that I made is trying to catch the top, and he did a good job, but maybe he's not going to do it next time, for the top. But then we will need to wait until it goes back. And one of the biggest tests for the model will be when we reach the bottom. if we reach the bottom and my model still works in predicting the bottom, because that is the strongest part of the model, even more than the trend. It seems to work really, really well with the bottoms. So if we don't catch the bottom, if we don't, I will try to make a prediction when it comes. Of course, right? We are in this thing together. This is what we are trying to do anyway. I will be there all the time telling you, oh, we're coming close to the bottom. We will have the ups. So we will put a lot on the stake. We will have a lot on stake to make sure that the bottom is correct. It's still a prediction. I mean, I'm not God. I'm not, like I'm trying to do science. But this one of it will be strong test for the model. So to answer your question, let's wait until we reach the bottom, and then let's see if it continues to behave like it is. And then if it doesn't, we will have to go back to the drawing board. But this is when. But stock to flow, he's very strongly linked to make this time. And this way, in fact, let me finish my sentence. This time, he really needs to get that prediction correct. And this prediction, by the way, it depends what you do. Like he last time he was saying that he was 100,000, it was going to be 100,000, and then he modified a little bit the model to make it, because he didn't reach 100,000, so he started to adjust it a little bit. But with this model, you have a little bit of room. Mine, for example, has almost no room. Because I'm using the Genesis as the original point. My model is much more rigid in terms of how much room I have to adjust it. His model less, because, for example, from what I understand, he doesn't make it go through the Genesis because it doesn't make any sense to go through the Genesis. So he modified it a little bit where he could say, well, it's more like a range. It's not trying to say something bad about Plan B. It's more I'm telling you that these are some of the dangers in making this model. You can make people very excited, and then everybody gets mad. But I think it was like pushing more of the hype side of things, more than being careful last cycle. So everybody got excited with this 100,000 prediction. Remember, at that time, Bitcoin was much, much less, right? It was, I don't remember what it was, like 20,000, maybe, 10, 15,000, at the bottom, maybe even less. We will have to check. And he was saying, hey, it's going to go all the way there, like, in fact, 10 times, right? This was his prediction, was going to going 10 times up. So from 10,000 to 100,000. So everybody got excited when it didn't happen. And, if he was a little bit more cautious and say, look, I'm expecting this range, people will have been less mad with him. But because of this hype, and people got really disappointed with him, right? I think even almost in an unfair way somehow. But so if you take his lower range of his prediction, let's say, that last time was like maybe 50,000, let's say, and then you extend it. The problem with that really, even his more conservative prediction, the price never went even to the conservative prediction. It stayed lower than that. And his prediction is that it should go above that. But so this time, his prediction, the more conservative value. So that is his conservative value. So 500,000. It is already more than 2,000 with my prediction. Not 2,000, 2 times than my prediction. If the price doesn't go there, that model is gone. That is done. That probably people will not talk about S2F in the future anymore because it's done. And he even admit that. He actually talked with me and he say, I agree with that. I agree. Because then the next prediction is every time there is a halving, we go up by 10. So next cycle, we should go all the way to 5 million. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. It's unrealistic. Let's be realistic. It's going. Bitcoin is already going fast up, but let's try to be realistic. So if a model, we go to 300, hey, don't come to me and tell me, hey, you say 200. I'm happy. That means that what I said, that the 3 points were not statistical significant. So I tried to do my best, and I was happy because it was a more conservative approach. If he does better, great, right? But that doesn't touch the long-term prediction. That doesn't have it. So we will have to go back and see if we can find a model for how these peaks behave. Maybe they are unpredictable. But the point is, the chart is still good in telling you we are coming close to that peak. We don't have to get to the peak exactly. All what we need to know that we are very close to it. And so this chart is still very good for that because it tells you this divergence distance. Farther we are from the trend, more dangerous territory we are. And also because of that cycles, we know that they tend to happen more or less at the same time. Now, could it happen a few days before, a few days later? Yes. If it happened 5 months later, even this regularity of Bitcoin is broken. I don't know what to say. It can happen. Then we will have to deal with that. But right now, it seems that this is how everything happens. So let's see. But hopefully, at least I made very clear what is the logic, what is the systematic approach, what are the limitations, and so on. Hopefully, all this is clear, and it's good that I'm recording because people can go back and say, hey, yeah, Giovanni explained this and this and this other, but let me know, first of all in the comment, but also interacting with me on Discord and on X if you agree on this approach, or if you have questions, or if you have doubt, or or if I say something stupid, then you can always tell me, be nice, but and civil, but tell me, Giovanni, I don't agree on this. I think you undervalue this, or you didn't think about that, because many times with your comment they make me think, and actually I improve the models, I improve my own understanding. This is one of the reasons I want to interact with people. It's not about fame. It's not, I don't care about that kind of stuff. I care about, I get some support. But sorry if I bother you with that all the time, because simply I made this kind of personal choice of kind of said, I really love this. I love to interact with the community. It makes me want to get up every day. I love the topic. I love to understand Bitcoin better. It's such fascinating, and it's becoming a serious scientific field of study. People are publishing a lot of papers. You can look yourself. You can go online and go on Scholar. Google us this thing called Scholar, and they have all this scientific paper, and type Bitcoin. You will see a lot of serious scientists really studying this field. So maybe one day I go and teach in a university about Bitcoin, but maybe I make a class, but right now, if you can support me on Patreon, that is one of the ways for me to continue to do this full time. If if people find it useful and interesting, but everything else is relative, and it's mostly I'm learning. I adore teaching. Because teaching to me is fantastic, because it's a service, and it's a two-way interaction, because you always learn something, and it also makes you, I'm trying to, I study physics, but when I started to teach it, all the things I studied started to make sense, because I passed, I got an A in that class, but I really didn't get it, like in a way that I could explain it to other people. But when you can explain it to other people, or at least you try to do that effort, then it starts to make sense to you. And this is one of the reasons why I love to do what I'm doing right now, interact. So you're patient with me, because you're coming here and listening to all the things I have to say, all the silly things I'm saying. But you're also helping me, because you are asking questions, you're kind of see if what I say makes sense. It's really useful, hopefully in both directions. And so, okay, I'm going to take a nice short answer, then really I'm going to stop. I'm a little exhausted, and I'm going for too long anyway. But it was finally one time. March, the price fell below at bottom only a few hours. Yeah, and one of the things I'm also trying to teach or share, whatever you want to call it, is how we should think about these things, right? Because first of all, remember, right, the entire idea of this model is not really to predict like little moves, like, oh, okay, this day did this. We can try to use it in that way, but I already say it's like stretching it a little bit, right? So when you see things like this where it drop, remember, first of all, this is the more adaptive version, so it's kind of trying to follow the local data a little bit more. But it doesn't matter. It's not really important, right? I will say I'm a little bit more, I don't know if disappointed, but concerned by the fact that the price here was higher, because we are expecting to follow more this trend. So, but concern is not the right word. We want to understand what was going on there, right? Why we are not going all the way here and stay there, because this is what we should have done, right? We were supposed to be at the bottom. So the bottom was here. What happened? I don't know. I see. This is one of the problem with the chart sometimes. Okay. It does these silly things. It jumped back. Anyway, so here was the bottom, right? Then the price went up, right? And in this local representation, because I don't think it did when you look at the overall chart, but here, because we are using a short amount of data, the price went above the trend locally. So it seemed that somehow, even if we reach, the bottom, the price wanted to recover for some reason, right? And then it went back again, and it didn't go all the way to the bottom here, right? And stay there, because usually this is what it does: it reaches the bottom and then stays there for a long time, and then there is this transition, and then it starts to go up. Here he was doing something slightly different. So maybe there were some events, some local events, some bullish events. I don't know what it was. We will have to go and look. It will be nice at a certain point to have a chart where actually we put all these events, like like different things that happen. Maybe different exchanging opening, or maybe some law that was passed, it was favorable, something else, that has an effect on Bitcoin price. Then here the COVID happened, and it was almost like a reset, and the price did go there. But the fact that it just maybe actually was one of these weeks, right? So the range of the price, right? The way to understand the weeks basically shows the low, shows the top, right? The bar itself is the close and the open, right? So it opened higher and it closed lower, and then the low was even lower. The low during the day was even lower than the closing price. And so this is called a wick. So the wick for that day went below there, and then it came back, right? So it's not really broken anything. It's just like, it's amazing already that we find some pattern and there is some regularities. And again, if I was looking this chart live and we had the other information coming from different places, etc., I will say it looks like, yes, it was this local event, but it should recover. It should recover. And by the time we started to see these green bars, we knew that we were in the recovery region, right? And we started to go up. So kind of what this says, that we left the bear behind and we were ready, notwithstanding the COVID, to react in a very strong way to the fact that we had an halving, like we always do. So it was very interesting, very surprising, because maybe we'll have thought, okay, no halving this time, now, yeah, I mean, the halving happens no matter what, but the reaction to the halving will not be bullish. We will be all sad because we have COVID, etc. But no matter what, maybe it was dampened. Maybe the dampening was due to the COVID because it was not as big as the previous one. Or maybe there is something else, because as the system becomes bigger, these excitations are becoming smaller and smaller. The system doesn't react as strongly as it did before. It still reacts, but not as strongly. So it's, you have to understand what the chart is telling you. It's not something to be taken 100% literally. It tells us there is a general pattern, that there are regularities, and we can use them carefully at our advantage. That is all what is telling us. Okay. So I think I will stop here because we are ready. Next bottom. I don't. Okay. So yeah, this again. If you are not on my X, come to my X because I discuss these things all the time. But yeah, so the prediction for the top is, if everything stays the same, if everything works like it's supposed to work, we have 210, let's say, for the top, and it's going to be 2000, end of 2025. The bottom should go down to something close to 70,000 for the bottom, and the bottom should happen about 1 year after the top. So we're talking about, and again, it seemed to happen more or less at the end of the year. Like, we had the 2022, the 2022 bottom, it was close to 16,000, right? And it was kind of at the end of the year. And by the way, it was not X, it was Facebook. I made a post and they say, guys, we reached the bottom. And people didn't believe because this at the time we had a FTX, there was Luna, there were all these crazy things. People thought that the price was going to go down all the way to 5,000. And I said, no way. This is the bottom. This is where we usually are. This is the type of deviation that we usually have from the trend. And at that time, this is when actually I started really, really strongly to trust the model and want to dedicate my time to it and let other people know. I published the model before, but this is when I really committed to it. And in fact, I made the prediction and I was right. And it's not about being right, it's about the model being right. And let's see if it works this time. And the entire idea, let's hope that it helps people to become wealthy and be free from, the stupid economic trap that we are all in. That is the entire goal, right? So hopefully this is something that you find useful and a tool. Don't forget, it's just a tool. Okay, so thank you so much for your time to put up with my long explanations, and hopefully all this is useful. And please join the Discord and Patreon if you can. Okay, I love you all. Thank you so much. Ciao ciao. Abbracci. Abbracci means hugs, so give everybody hugs, virtual hugs to everybody. Ciao.